is called Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Please welcome with me the director of the film, Mr. Matt Reeves. Welcome, Matt. I'm well, sir. Thank you.
Wow.
What a great, exciting project to be part of.
That is for sure, yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Help set up where we start in this film when we first enter this world. Where have we left off from the last film, and what's the status?
Sure. I mean, you know, what's so amazing about Rise is that it ends, it's sort of a sucker punch, because you see, it's such an intimate story. It's this story about how Caesar sort of brings intelligence to the apes and leads this sort of little insurrection. And then at the end, in that sort of title sequence, you suddenly see that the viral apocalypse is about to hit the human race in the solar plexus, and you realize, oh, it really is going to be Planet of the Apes. And so what we wanted to do was, look, you know that the story is all leading to Planet of the Apes, not Planet of the Humans and the Apes. And what we thought that this was an opportunity to do was to tell a story about the next step. And the idea is that there's actually a moment where humans and apes could have lived together. And so you come into this world, you know, the thing is that there's a lot of sort of post-apocalyptic movies sort of today. We seem to be endlessly fascinated with our own destruction. And Planet of the Apes, that's certainly one of the features of those stories. But we wanted to start instead in an ape world creation movie, so that you could actually see it's 10 years later, and as you start the movie, you think that the viral apocalypse may in fact have wiped out all humans. And so it's the dawn of a new species, which is intelligent apes, and it's their world. And you spend 15, 20 minutes in their world, and you see Caesar and the world that he's created, and we think it's really exciting, and we're really excited to share it with you guys. And then what ended up happening is, just as you start to really get engaged in the relationships and the drama of that huge ape family that's taking this sort of evolutionary leap, you suddenly realize, oh, there are humans too. And so there are two families, an ape family and a human family. And the question is, who is going to survive?
And in the reimagining of this story, this is a piece that we've never seen before. We've never seen the coexistence between those two groups.
Yeah, that was what was really exciting for me. I am such a huge Planet of the Apes fan. I mean, as a kid, I had all the dolls. I had an 8mm reel with, like, you know, Beneath the Planet of the Apes, which I watched until the sprocket holes fell apart. I mean, I just was so obsessed with Planet of the Apes and actually really wanting to be an ape. And I think the thing that blew me away about Rise is that I finally got to be an ape by watching the movie and actually feeling that the most human performance, the most human character in the story was not human. It was Caesar. And I thought, wow, what an incredible thing they've done. And when I was approached about trying to continue that story, I was incredibly excited about exactly that, which was this idea of continuing the emotional journey of Caesar, and then sort of not being, sort of coming into the story with this idea of humans as villains, but humans as us, and the idea of this difficult problem. I mean, Caesar has his sort of ties to both worlds. You know, his father was essentially a human, and he, of course, now has a huge human family, a huge ape family. And so when the humans show up, it's not a story about villains. It's a story about survival, and it's a story about what can these two populations do. And I thought, wow, that I haven't seen. That's really exciting, and I think that, you know, we're really excited to share it with people, to see that ape world. I think you're gonna, you know, we went up there, we shot in crazy conditions. I mean, the last movie was so beautifully done, and we wanted to take that reality and take it further. We went up into the woods, and we shot in the rain. We shot in absurd conditions that you would never shoot a mocap movie in, so that you would feel like you were in their world. And we took these 3D cameras, and the movie, we think, is very, very immersive, and hopefully you will all become apes by watching it.
I understand you brought us a little something to take a look at today.
Yeah, we have, you know, the crazy thing about these movies are that there's just so much to do, and we are still finishing the movie, and so what you're about to see isn't even finished entirely. It's parts of it are, and a lot of it is, but some of it is not, and we are still finishing the movie. So because of all of this, you guys are one of the first audiences ever to see any of this stuff. And so we're basically starting out with a sort of extended sort of trailer, and then there's a little surprise at the end. So why don't we watch it, and then we'll bring out the cast.
Great. Hi, Keri. Welcome. Oh, we were watching it. Sorry, I didn't mean to rush you. As Dreyfus, the inimitable Gary Oldman. Sorry guys, I didn't mean to rush you out here. I apologize. Didn't mean to make you run. Boy, this looks so intense, so incredible, Matt. Congratulations.
It's a comedy. Thank you.
It's a comedy, yeah. You mentioned really quickly, without getting too technical, I believe this is the first time that performance capture and 3D have ever been used in practical settings, right? You actually went out in the world and shot with it.
It's not that it's like when you got somebody took chocolate and put it in peanuts and all of that. This idea here is not that none of it has ever been done. No one has ever done it because it's absurd to on this scale. So someone has taken mocap and done it in practical occasions. In fact, I think Andy could probably tell you a lot about it. But nobody has done it really to this extent. I mean, the last movie shot primarily on stage, and this movie shot probably 85 to 90% like in actual settings. And we went in the rain, and we took the cameras into conditions you should never take them into, and if the people who rented us the cameras knew it, they probably wouldn't give it to us again. But basically, the idea was to make it a very immersive and realistic experience, and hopefully that's what we're creating.
Keri is one of the human members of the cast, for lack of a better word. You play Ellie, who is a nurse formerly with the CDC, right? So you've been through it all as this simian flu has sort of washed over the population and taken its toll. Can you tell us a little bit about her?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing that Matt sort of created very well is this idea that any of the humans who are in this story are survivors, and they've lost pretty much everything, and they're, just by their circumstance, they must be incredibly resourceful people, and they're all incredibly damaged at this point. And so I think they are in these strange makeshift families, and I think they have gained some semblance of peace, and they don't want to lose that. And they don't want to lose those few loved ones that they have with them. So I think that's how my character enters the adventure, is not wanting to let those people that you love, that you have left, out of their sight.
And speaking of that loss, Gary, Dreyfus is a character who has lost his family and friends and almost everyone he loves to this virus. And that has changed him, maybe not for the better.
I mean, I see Dreyfus as a heroic character. I mean, it's obviously, it's affected him and changed him. In some respects, I think that a tragedy on that magnitude falls you can actually can give you something that you ordinarily wouldn't have had, So again, it's what Keri said. These people are they have to be survivors. They've survived not only an epidemic, but then the ensuing sort of chaos and sort of post-apocalyptic kind of insanity that followed, and that they are resourceful people. You would have to be a survivor to have got this far. Yeah.
Andy, let's talk a little bit about Caesar, reprising your role, bringing the character to life now. Was it 10 years in the future? 10 years. What changes did you have to make? What did you bring to it that was fresh and new and different from Rise?
Life has got a hell of a lot more complicated. The This is the character I'm talking about, not my own person. My own life's quite complicated too. But no, Caesar is, Caesar, you know, we've seen him grow from this infant who was brought up in effect with human beings who believed himself to be human, as Matt was saying earlier, who then in his teenage years feels a rejection from humanity, who then has to then go and re-engage with what should be his own kind, and galvanize a disparate group of chimpanzees and gorillas and orangutans, a disparate group of peoples, and find a way of bringing them together and then leading them on. That's where we leave the last movie for Caesar. In this instance now, 10 years later, he has become their leader. He is an elder statesman, if you like, and with all the complications of what that entails. But he's not a ruler that rules with an iron fist. He's an egalitarian leader. He listens, he values all of the apes' various opinions. He has some tenets of belief which he's carried from the humanity that he grew up with, the important things that he's carried, which perhaps the other apes don't really know. He is a father. He has a teenage son, which has all of its own complications. He has a wife. He has a young infant. He is a family man, or ape. He then is forced into this incredibly difficult situation once the humans arrive. Not because because there's no absolutes, because he's not a fundamentalist, because he is an empathetic creature, and because he remembers that there are people who are from another tribe, who are equally compassionate and who equally are struggling and who are equally going through a difficult situation. And so to explain to his own people and to retain their strength as a group, as a country, as a village, as a people, he's under an enormous amount of pressure, and that's where we basically pick up the story.
If you guys have questions for these folks, feel free to line up at the microphone out here in the center, and we'll try to fit in as many as we can. Matt, I've got a quick question regarding, just from looking at the trailer, it strikes me as a very political film also. You have these two groups that are diverse, but both think they're right. As Gary mentioned, I mean, he's a hero to his side, and there seems to be diplomacy at play, and there's standoffs. You have to sort of root for both sides, I can imagine, to make the film work, right?
That was really the key, is that we didn't want there to be any villains. That the thing that I found so remarkable in Rise was the way you emotionally rooted for Caesar because you understood him, and it was important given this situation that we feel that way for all the characters. And so the idea, the tension of the story is that essentially you have two extended families of different species that are both trying to survive. And the question of coexistence is not an easy one. The question is, can we manage to find a way to get along? And the great thing about the Planet of the Apes story is that, of course, it's a metaphor for who we are. I mean, the secret, you know, the story is supposedly, oh, well, it's a story where the animals are in charge. Well, actually, we are the animals, and that's the secret. And the great thing about Planet of the Apes is it allows us to look at ourselves. And that's, I think, what we found so exciting in exploring the story and the characters, which is that there are no easy answers here. And that's a really special kind of world to get to explore under the guise of something that's also a fantastic spectacle and a great adventure, a movie that's thrilling, but hopefully in equal parts emotional and thought-provoking.
That's great. Hi there, what's your name and your question?
My name is Pat. Hello, Commissioner. Andy, what role took more out of you, Gollum or Caesar?
So what was more difficult?
Yes. Thank you.
Well, let me think. How long have you got? I think it would be fair to say that Caesar has always been much more of a challenge, because at least with Gollum you sort of know where you are because he talks all the time and sort of tells you what he's feeling. You know, or Smeagol, one of the two, either one of them gets it across. But Caesar, you know, in the first movie, of course, doesn't speak at all apart from saying two words, and in this movie, one of the major challenges was to convey his emotions without over-anthropomorphizing him, but also in terms of his dialogue, and in terms of one of the big challenges for all of the actors playing apes was the level to which they could articulate speech. And so we spent a lot of time in rehearsals really finding a logic for for how they speak, you know. So it's a combination basically of all their eight individual vocalizations and then gesture and a combination of those two, and then sign language, which Caesar will have learned and taught to the other apes, and then Caesar being probably the most evolved, you know, how his speech is articulated. We didn't want to make this huge leap forward where he suddenly could, you know, reel off huge, long monologues and be very articulate and talk about the weather and so on. You know, it was very much about finding the prototype language for those apes. But on top of that, just emotionally, how to portray, I suppose, what a fairly complex journey, almost as a, you know, without over anthropomorphizing.
It's a silent journey.
A silent journey.
You're telling a story like chapter.
In a sense, yeah, it does revolve. A lot of the scenes with the apes are fairly silent and using little guttural language and then sign and communicating these incredibly complex. And actually, later on in the story, when it gets more philosophical, we discovered the more difficult that got. And there are several scenes later on where Caesar is being philosophical, but again, how do you play that without over making it too human?
Hi there, what's your name and your question, please?
My name is Jennifer, and first of all, big fan of the franchise. Because the first Planet of the Apes was so iconic and had that iconic line, damn you all to hell, will we be seeing that maybe at all in some form in this film, since every other movie since then has kind of had that, get your filthy hands off me, you damn dirty.
Do you mean the line itself?
Yeah, or something along those lines.
No, I don't think we do have that line. I mean, to me, what that first film represents for us is, you know, because we talked about it actually when we were trying to work on the story and the script and the idea of, you know, in a way, the way Rise had lots of wonderful homages to the story. And I think to us, the way in which we honored the first film is that that's the trajectory that we are moving toward. The great thing about this story is that we already know the ending. And the ending is it's Planet of the Apes. And now we know the beginning from Rise. And this story is really about the how do we get there. So we weren't trying to sort of necessarily wink at it and have that sort of thing, but there are things that we're aware of in the canon, little details about, you know, ape shall not kill ape, things like that that we're aware of that sort of contextualize it. But for us, the biggest homage is that we're aiming toward it and we're trying to get there, but in a way that tells us a lot about these characters.
Hi there, what's your name and your question?
Hi, my name is Raymond from Bakersfield. Doesn't matter. Big fan of everyone on that panel, but my question is for Andy. Andy, like in that first scene in the very first Planet, when you had your face up against the glass, very emotional scene for me personally, but where do you go, like emotionally, somewhere in maybe a mental state you get into, like where do you go to pull that emotion, not just through you, because your face can be seen in Caesar's, you know, basically, and I want to know where you go to find that, you know, to pull that kind of emotion.
I mean, any one of us here will tell you, when you're acting, but part of your exploration of the character involves putting a certain amount of your own personality under a microscope and drawing on the things that make you laugh, make you cry, that touch you, that hurt you, that make you enraged beyond belief, make you, you know, that is the job of the actor, and we all do it in different ways. There's no one method, there's no thing. I mean, you know, we just put ourselves in the moment, and I think by your question, I suppose what you're saying is there any difference when you're playing a performance-captured character? Do you go to a different place to find that, to play an ape or so on? But I actually think there's no difference at all. If I was playing a man who was being separated, or you know, a teenage boy separated from his father and being left by his father in a home or something, a halfway house or a prison, then that is. You know, then I would play the scene the same way, despite the fact, I mean, channeling an ape, yes, of course, but with all of these ape characters, it's as Matt says, these are metaphors for the human condition, and so the most natural place to draw from, of course, is yourself, and you dig deep,
I wonder for Keri and Gary, did it help that this film was shot a little more practically in the actual surroundings? Did that help inform your performances at all when you were working?
Versus on stage?
Yeah, for example, a film like this might have been shot on a stage previously, but in this case you got to work in a practical setting. Does that help inform the performance?
I think it always does. I love breathing in it. I think it becomes part of the performance.
As far as
I got the good forest, the magic forest.
yeah,
You
you got all the
didn't get the magic forest.
you got the rain and the bugs.
Yeah, I like the rain and the bugs too. Yes, I think it always is good to be in a place, and I also feel like it's good to be in a place with the people you're working with because it concentrates it all. You're there just to do that, and it sort of informs the whole process.
Well, it's like being, you feel more like a sort of real, that thing of traveling
Yes.
fires, like
Yeah.
a troop.
Yeah.
And you go in and, I mean, on some occasions, it's like we're Serkis, isn't it?
Yeah.
Serkis. I just turned to Andy Serkis and said Serkis. You know what I mean? That's, but it is like that thing of sometimes we go in and it feels like you take over the town. The circus is in town. I said it twice now.
Hi there, what's your name and your question, please?
Hi, I'm Richard, and I really enjoyed the Rise of the Planet of the Apes. It had a very profound impact on me. And question for Mr. Reeves. To what extent are we going to find out what happened to James Franco's character or how his story concludes in this movie?
Is it?
Yes, he is. The thing about Will, Caesar really has two sort of families. He has his ape family, but he has his human family. And Will was essentially his father. And, there was no way we could tell this story without, because the movie on the ape side is so much about the emotional life of Caesar and understanding sort of where he's come from, because where he's come from and what he is what makes him the right leader for this time for the apes. And it also makes him the one to grapple with the problems here, because he has connections to humanity and he has deep connections obviously to the apes. And that was something that we wanted to draw upon for this, to not only remind you, but to connect you emotionally to what he'd lost. I mean, the idea obviously is that Will was a scientist and was involved with this experiment, and given what happened with the virus, he would be gone. But we wanted to find a way to recall him in some way, and so in that way you'll see him in the film, and the way in which he's in the film is really about how he affects Caesar and Andy playing that scene. So that's the way, without giving it totally away, that's sort of the way you see him. It's not, there are no flashbacks, so to speak.
Hi there, what's your name and question?
Hi, I'm Valerie, and first of all, Keri, I'm a huge Mickey Mouse Club fan. Sorry, I have to go there.
Thank you.
And yeah, my question...
Have you seen any of her recent work? She's also written some other
I
things.
loved August Rush. That was one of my favorites.
Nothing better than that, though.
It's true. No. So my question is my question is for you guys. What drew you to the project? Were you sought out, or did you seek this specifically?
Well, Matt was my involvement in it. We worked together on Felicity, and we keep trying to find stuff to do together because we like each other. And he called and said, "I'm doing this crazy big thing. Come do this." And I just think Matt would be. I loved his take on it, and I always want to work with Matt.
Yeah, it was just, I got a phone call saying that they were doing the next Dawn of Planet of the Apes, and that Matt was directing. And I thought that you are a tremendous talent ever since you first came on the scene. So that was my initial excitement about the project. I thought not only is it a piece of cinematic history, and that it would be wonderful to be a part of it, but an opportunity to work with Mr. Reeves.
And I begged them to do it.
You mentioned this, the cinematic history of the franchise. Is that daunting at all for any of you to take part in something that's reimagining an iconic franchise that has such an impact on people to this day? They're still fans of that original.
Well, I think it might be more daunting than that. Because...
What are you trying to say? You know what?
I mean, you mentioned you were a fan of the original.
To me, oh my God, I am such a fan of Planet of the Apes. I'm a fan of all the Apes movies. I mean, I was so affected by them as a kid, and for me, it was less about intimidation and more about the opportunity to be in this world, and in specific, the way in which this world had been reimagined. I mean, the idea of getting into the emotional lives of these characters, the way that Rise did, that was too incredible to miss out on. So when I was approached to do it, first of all, I was like, oh, yes. And, you know, I think that I have such sort of love for the franchise, but I also am thrilled by what it's become. And in that sense, nothing will ever change what those films are. They'll always be those movies, and Planet of the Apes, Beneath the Planet of the Apes, those will always be movies that I look back on as movies that, you know, it's funny because before I was a huge Star Wars fan when I was 11. Before I was a Star Wars fan, I was a huge Planet of the Apes fan. And so Planet of the Apes has always been sort of a part of my imagination from a very early age. And in that way, it feels like a great gift to have been given the opportunity to work in the world.
Okay, we have time for one more question, sir. What's your question?
Hi, I'm Bobby. Mr. Serkis, would you mind calling me a filthy hobbit?
Or here. So I can do it outside by the toilets if you like. Alright, you're a filthy hobbit.
Did you mean this precious?
I just got to say, I'm taking over Instagram today, and I thought it would be really cool if you would help us with a line from the movie Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, which I'd like to record you all saying. It's a Caesar line which you saw in the trailer, which is home, family, future. I'm going to film you, and I'd like you, after 3, let me just get this going, to say, as your best Caesar, home, family, future, okay? And 3, 2, 1, action.